Hello, this is No Bullshit Gaming Podcast to Help Gamers session number 23. We're discussing the latest industry news and fun knowledge. But let's not forget, this is still a 4 a.m. conference discussion live, so let's not take it too seriously. Today we have Felix, COVID catcher, Braberg in the house.
Whoop, whoop. Third time's the charm, yeah?
Yeah, exactly. Jakub, microphone hugger, Remiar, and myself, Matej, festival boy, Lanchevich.
Mate,
Man,
like I'm thinking about starting a business where basically I sneeze in envelopes of people who want to have COVID because I always have COVID. Like this is like bullshit. And speaking of 4 a.m. discussions, you were awake at 4 a.m. today, weren't you?
no, today, but a day before. So,
Okay.
yeah, we had very interesting conversation at the festival, obviously. I met a lot of former colleagues, actually. It's kind of nice. How are you? Besides COVID,
I
obviously.
feel like shit.
Well, I feel like shit as well.
Nice. Remo, come on, cheer us up. How do you feel?
Yeah.
Pretty good. Like I would say, not drinking, not doing festivals. Everything's great this week. Not like heat waves declined, so that's good. Like nice 23, 25 degrees.
I'm
Playing
so
soccer.
worried
I
about
didn't
your
drink.
immune system, man, because like it never gets exposed. It never gets punched in the gut like mine does, you know? Like it's not hardened, you know?
I have all the vaccines, man.
Me too. I got COVID as well. Even after 3 shots of what it was, AstraZeneca. No, Pfizer. Yeah, AstraZeneca and Pfizer. So now I have what they call like hybrid immunity, but I guess Felix, you don't have that anymore. Or
No
maybe
immunity.
you have now even better immunity for at least like 1 month.
I don't know, man. I've
Nobody
had COVID
knows.
so many goddamn times right now. So, like, I don't even think I have immunity, or I'm actually think my body is incapable of having immunity for this. This is like third or fourth time. It's so many times I've actually lost count. Like, it's bullshit.
Yeah, what can you do? I mean, I'm expecting COVID. I have COVID like 3 times until the end of the year, most probably. You never know. Yeah. Okay, so today we'll skip news, but we will definitely have fun and drop some knowledge. So last session with our super important friend Eric sparked one topic that was in my head, and it's always in my head when it comes to starting to work with the company. So how to do a proper game performance audit? And since we have ad monetization, game design, and UA in here, let's talk about that. So I think, can we actually start with you, Remo, because you always speak and it's never-ending story. So I think if we want to keep keep pace, let's start with you, and then we can mix it up a little bit.
Okay, sure, we can do that. Yeah, I've done this a few times already when we were all working on the other side of the barricade, pretty much. So this is just like a shorter version of my usual checklist that I would do. But yeah, let me start that. I would cut these into 3 categories. That is the team, the production, and the game itself, which I think all deserve like a special kind of attention themselves. So let's start with the first one, which is the most important. I think is the team. So usually when you go and look into like a new game, or you're doing a partnership, or maybe you're doing an acquisition or something kind of a similar, or just helping someone, first thing would be definitely to check the team and their past experience. We talk about this many times here, but genre expertise is really invaluable. Like if you have people that have been making, I don't know, match 3 games for 10 years and now they're making RPG, I think something doesn't click there. But again, on the other hand, if you have, let's say, a team that's been, I don't know, switched from Peak into Dream Games and now is making pretty much a similar game, you know that they know what they're doing. So looking for genre expertise in the past experience is really important, and pretty much taking is some kind of a risk factor, because what I do and like how this kind of a list that I do is pretty much you're trying to check out the red flags and know that, like, yeah, look here and look under this mattress and look under this, cabinet, and take out pretty much all the skeletons so you know what you are kind of looking at. The other important thing when looking at the team is to get a clear view of who is actually designing and leading the game, because this is kind of a hazy, or let's say not really clear thing in our industry. Sometimes games are driven by just product managers. Sometimes designers are somewhere there at the edge of the production doing their designs and then just kind of giving them to programmers. So it's really important to get some kind of a strong feel of who is actually leading the project, who is actually deciding like this feature will go out, this feature won't go out, this feature is, I don't know, too big for us, this feature will cut down, stuff like that. And then when you actually pinpoint the person, then comes the other part of the team discussion, and you are trying to pretty much discover how up to date are again with the genre innovation. So you talk with them about their vision for the game, the current trends, especially competitors. That's really important. Like, you need to find out if they actually know their competitors. And I know it's not like, I mean, no doesn't mean that they know the names of their competitors, but actually how their competitors work. How they work means how do they make money, which features are the critical ones that they use in their like feature portfolio, if they are innovating on those, if they're just like cloning something, and pretty much getting that kind of overall feel of like how the team is designing the game and what's their USP. That's also one of the kind of a tricky points here, when lots of times I would know that the team is just kind of cloning something and maybe doing some kind of really, really small innovation to it. But the big question is, do they really know what, like, if this will work? If they have a clear plan that, like, yeah, we're going to capture this audience and this audience is going to be, taken by us because we have this other feature which is going to delight the users because we're better than this one, and or we're innovating on the previous game, stuff like that. So I guess that would be the team. And the last one that a little bit skips already to the production category is that awareness of the team regarding their feature roadmap, how long some features take to be actually created and implemented. Because sometimes, and I know this for many times, I've seen this in the industry, that people who have these kind of really, really ambitious roadmaps and like, yeah, we're gonna do matchmaking and PvP and clans feature and social feature, and they jam it into like 2 months.
Yeah.
And then you look at it and like, no way. No
Oh,
way you're gonna do
everything
this.
looks good on paper. What
Yeah,
what do you
paper can
mean?
take it. That's the
Yeah.
problem. So this is again really, really critical point to kind of find out if people know how much time it will take them to do some of those features, and if the team like did them before or have any experience with them, they allocated enough capacity. Because usually what happens that roadmaps, as they go further and further, starts to crumble, and like, yeah, we cannot do this, we cannot do that, we're late 2 months, we're going to cut this one, cut that one, and so on and so forth. So it's really important to see if they're in sync with all of this. So
So
that would
okay,
be the
if you see this in the roadmap, like what do you do? What's the plan afterwards? Like, what's the next step for the team to just?
depending on what's the result of this.
Oh
But
yeah,
let's say if it's too ambitious, you try to cut it down to something that's testable, because the most important thing is to get some kind of actionable KPIs as soon as possible, so you're not building something that won't work.
yeah,
So
and you don't need to wait like 6 months until you
yeah,
get
yeah,
actually
exactly.
everything in place. Okay.
And the important thing is that have stuff that's kind of actionable or seen by the user at least until day 3. If you are building that really, really far ahead clan feature or whatever metagame feature that will be, I don't know, from level 58, that the team is already working on, it won't make the cut. Like if
Yeah.
and every game fails if they cannot achieve day 1 retention in the end. So you try to make it granular enough so they can pretty much go and take one milestone after the other. That's really important. And yeah, that goes into the, like, we're switching again into the second category, which is the production. And yeah, that's the first question: is the roadmap realistic? Do you see the capacity of the team being able to actually code up with it roadmap? Is there enough programmers? Are there enough backend people? How's the even the state of the code? I know, like, I cannot really discern this or like see it out, like how it is, how good it is. But it's really important to know that the code is okay, because I've seen teams fail because their code base went so bad that just updating it took them so much time that they pretty much crawled to halt.
How
So
do you check this? It's quite subjective, right? Not the code part, but
yeah, you need
is
a
there
code
enough
person
time
for
or
this. But
yeah?
sometimes you can, if you talk to people, symptoms kind of arise that will tell you again these red flags that maybe
Yeah.
something is not really okay. Which means, like, yeah, we're updating the build once per month. really, like for like something that's in production, that's like too slow. And like, why are you updating so infrequently, or some kind of other kind of a red flags that arise if you talk about this, and from that point on you can determine that there are some problems.
Yeah,
So
Joachim mentioned this on the interview we did together in the past. Like he is also like evaluating the companies based on like discussions and questions. So he's asking a lot of questions and then trying to check these red flags in between the lines and like in the answers. And
yeah,
then
like
then
it's
you
pretty
know.
much the same, like like a doctor's appointment. Like you tell him his symptoms, or you try to pretty much ask enough questions so you get the symptoms, and from the symptoms you okay, is this disease, is this other disease, or like there's nothing, there's a problem. uh
But you
yeah
know, sometimes the doctor actually do the checkup and then try to examine like what's wrong, not only ask questions.
yeah, exactly. Sometimes you need to get your hands dirty and like go into documents, read the documents,
Yeah.
read the Excel sheets, read the dashboards or stuff like that, if there are even any, and do it yourself, because this whole process is just to kind of cut down all the red flags that you don't know about. So you're trying to pretty much make sure that, okay, you look into this and this and this, and there's no problem there. Last thing regarding production is, of course, soft launch and the roadmap for soft launch. This is same category as the normal roadmap, whereas the team will tell you like, okay, we're gonna do this and that, and then soft launch for 3 months, and then global launch. Like
No,
really,
no,
3 months?
no. Like better is like, okay, so we have soft launch. We will have soft launch 1 month because everything's ready. Like, oh, whoa,
Yeah, and then
wait a
there's no
second,
ad
wait.
SDKs or anything, and you're like, man, like you really want to test this before you do global launch, mate.
No, don't worry. You know, we were in the pre-production for like 6 months, and like everything is there. So we have the game ready. It's going to fly. Like, yeah, of course. Okay.
Yeah.
When someone tells everything is there, usually there's something missing.
That's a red flag. That's
Yeah.
usually a red flag.
Instead of them asking like, "Is everything there?" or like them saying like, "Yeah, it's all there," then you're like, "Yeah, something's fucking missing. I guarantee it."
Yeah, like let's take some industry examples. For instance, I don't know, Brawl Stars. Like Brawl Stars was in soft launch for 1.5 years, and they changed the meta game. They repaired it. Now it's making millions of dollars, and it
Yeah,
takes
dude, but
so
it's
much time.
Supercell.
Yeah, I know it's
Supercell, they
Supercell,
can
but
afford being in soft launch one
but
and a half
imagine
years.
how much capacity Supercell has, and even though they has it, it took them 1.5 years to actually execute on all those things. So if if like, oh, we have this problem with monetization, we're gonna be figured out in soft launch in 3 months. Like, yeah, sure,
Yeah, no, yeah,
definitely.
Yeah.
So again, it's about the dialogue with the team and their kind of expectations. It's about management of expectations, and you try to rule them into something realistic. And if you are repairing this already, you try to allocate time again into some kind of actionable steps, make the whole soft launch granular in a way like, okay, we don't have any data yet. Let's just focus on the day one retention, so we know the core gameplay works, because day one retention is usually the derivative of your core gameplay. And then goes the other day 3, day 7, day 30, and then your monetization, and so on and so forth. All these other milestones. But if you focus on all of these at once, capable of everything, master of nothing. So I wouldn't really recommend do that. Last thing is the game itself, and this goes even before like talking all these other questions. Pretty much do your homework before. How long is the game in production? Who started the game, and if he's still there within the team? Because this is a really like frequent occasion. Whereas you come into the team, you ask them how's the game going, how it's been going, and then suddenly you learned out that the person who actually was the creative brains of the game left out already like a year ago, or half a year ago, or 3 months ago. So this is really important, because then it means that somebody else is either doing a pivot, or they are following into steps of someone there's not there to kind of help them direct. Next thing would be, again, expectations regarding KPIs. Ask the team itself if they have any kind of expectations from their soft launch KPIs, if they're aiming high or aiming low, or if they're aiming even anywhere. Like worst answer you can get, like, how do you think about your monetization? We want to make so much money. So that's really bad. But actually, people knowing that, I don't know, we're in this genre, and this genre is really LTV hungry because the CPI is really high, so we need to know and like adjust the feature set based on that. Stuff like, I don't know, ads. We know this genre will be 70-30, so 70% IPs, 30% ads. We want to implement this and that for that. We have this system in the game economy that's allocated in the budget. of the ad revenue and the IP revenue and stuff like that. And again, just by talking about these things, you can clearly see where the team is heading, what's their current status, and what's their plan and their execution. Again, this just goes into more and more detail, such as like knowing the competitors' KPIs. At least, like everybody knows that, I don't know, merge games currently has like over 20% or 15% day 30 retention because they're so addictive. And like if you're aiming for, I don't know, 5% day 30 or currently have 5% day 30, like like you won't make it, stuff like that. Last thing is, again, is there any plan behind the economy and monetization? Is there a person that's kind of managing the sinks and the sources? If it's balanced, at least on paper, because even if you balance it on paper, you still need to check it with dashboards and analytics if it's actually doing what you want it to do. But in the end, there's a clear plan, which means somebody is purposely creating the economy to create deficiencies. So at some point you will hit the wall and need to pay, or just grind out, or kind of a plan
Watch a
somewhere at the
couple
edge.
ads.
Yeah, watch a couple ads. Also, this is really also important, because usually if there are economies run on ads, which means that, I don't know, idle economies or these other like double your reward in the end.
Beautiful economies run on ads.
Yeah, these need to be built from the startup. From the startup, you need to know, like, okay, people will be watching ads and doubling the rewards, meaning that the double rewards are not bonus; they are the default. So if you're not doubling them, you're crawling, and
That was
that
a
needs
very important point you just made. Like, I can't stress how important that is. Like, that's such a good point.
you
No,
can.
why? You can just duct tape the ads on top of everything that
Yeah,
you've
sure,
done
sure. Like
before.
we have an economy, and let's just double the income. That will be great.
Of
Yeah,
course.
inflation is only in real life, not in game economies.
Yeah. Come on.
Yeah, crypto people would have their input here, definitely.
Games are not real. Come on. Of course, inflation doesn't exist there.
Yeah, and the last thing, which is, I guess, the most advanced question from the list, would be live ops. Because this is, again, really, really common problem where the whole team is doing this kind of heroic production, heroic soft launch initiative. They finally make it. They finally, global launch the game, spend tons of UA budget, and then suddenly there's no content after 3 months, and people are leaving like crazy because they haven't thought about live ops and additional content treadmills that, these games are game as services. Those are not like finish and move to next one. So there needs to be some plan with some kind of a content treadmill, or whatever kind of a content that you're creating that your team is capable of delivering after global launch, keeping the players in. And of course, your golden cohort, like how the golden cohort is going to eat through your content, because those are payers. They will eat through it very, very fast, and you need to have some kind of backups in order to keep them there, because once they eat through all the content, they leave if there's nothing else to eat for them.
Of course, they will do it super fast. So if you are expecting to have a content for 3 months, it's gonna be maybe 1.5 months, maybe 1 month for them. So,
yeah, like having
keep
some
that in
kind
mind.
of a, let's say, new event 1 month, or even during that first month of global launch, is completely okay, and like you're not overstretching it, you're actually keeping people in. So definitely have that some kind of a, I would always advise have this kind of recurring events template, to have at least that you can recycle at least when the team kind of hops on that content treadmill. So you have at least this kind of a recurring content that you maybe change skins, change visual, but at least there's something new being updated into the game all the time. Because if there's like a 3 months without an update, people are leaving like en masse. So that there's a big problem. Yeah, I think that's it regarding the really short version. What's your team production
It
game
only
status?
took 18 minutes. Well done,
See?
man.
Yeah, well done.
Yeah.
This is the short version, man. This is the
The
short
short
Hey.
version. Usually it takes like 2 days.
2 days of you talking, of course. Well, that's that's how we know you. It's like yeah, okay, but I can continue with the UA and creatives basically. I usually look at different things, and just to give you an idea of what I'm looking at, it's channel performance, then creative performance and history, and then I'm trying to look at daily spend versus daily revenue, what kind of percentage here the game has from paid UA and organic, percentage of installs, of course, and doing these data health checks, because well, you can run a lot of UA activities, and from time to time it's very important to check the data, because 9 out of 10 companies that I work with and starting to work with, they don't have the data in order, and from time to time you see very big discrepancies between different UA sources, or well, not the UA sources but data sources. If you compare MMP, Facebook dashboard, or a Google Play console, or Apple console, you see three different numbers, and that's very bad.
What's the cause usually? Like, you know?
It can be so there can be like very wrong implementation of the SDK. You can look at the different attribution windows, which is not a bad thing, but you need to have that in mind. That's usually an issue with an implementation of SDKs. You know, like from time to time, even when you do these like new updates, so sometimes programmers say like, oh well, there's this SDK, nobody uses it, and or he or she didn't ask anyone like, hey, is this actually something that you use? And UA manager would scream like, yeah, of course we need this. But then sometimes this can happen. SDK disappears, and then you can't track purchases, or something like that happens. And it's quite common.
That is
Uh,
very common, and even within vicinity to 20%.
yeah,
Just the miss itself.
yeah, but when I'm looking at these discrepancies, if I'm seeing 5 to 10%, maybe 15% differences, that's fine. I mean, 20, it's like, okay, that's a little bit of a red flag. But then like everything above 20% is just, yeah, well, stop UA, don't waste money, or well, at least make this a priority, because we need to check that. Yeah, getting back to the actual UA and the channel performance. So checking all the channels that are live, that's the first thing to check, and then everything that was tested and worked before, and trying to find like what worked, what didn't, and why. And I'm usually looking at the campaign structure and the campaign type. So let's take, for example, Facebook. So is the
Let's take
company
Google, man. Stupid Facebook. Fuck Facebook. It's not good anymore. Let's do a good one.
Yeah, well, I will. Yeah, don't worry. I will speak about
Get
I
there.
will speak about Google as well. You know, based on the campaign type, is the company running the AAA campaigns, which is automated app ads, or is it a regular type of campaign, the old one where you can actually target multiple things like interests or lookalikes? Are they running the campaign budget optimization? Are they running purchase campaigns or value optimized campaigns? Also, like this is also tied to what we discussed a couple of episodes before. It is important to check like what is the monetization strategy of the game. If, like you said, Jakub, there's 70% in-apps versus 30% ads. So is it are they running only in-app purchase campaigns or other campaigns as well? That's important. If it's 50-50 or even 70-30 can work. So you need to mix and match the multiple optimization structures. And then I'm usually looking at like what kind of GEOs the game is running, which is also important, because I like to actually target the whole world, but you need to think about like different GEO buckets. Usually there is like US as a standalone. Sometimes I put the US in the tier one bucket, because it tends to work well when you have multiple GEOs around the US. And then most companies are actually afraid of running tier two or tier three countries. Not sure why, but if you mix it up efficiently, you can see pretty good results from tier two countries and tier three countries, because the CPI, obviously the CPIs are not that high, and the LTV is not that high as well. But if you still can have a healthy margin, why wouldn't you run it, right? So usually using these like tier country buckets, or regional targeting, which is well available everywhere, even on Google, Unity, and TikTok and Facebook. And then it's also important to check what kind of age segments you are targeting. Sometimes people just do like everybody, and then if you drill down the age segments, you will see like the best results, for example, for 25 to 45. And like everything else is just not efficient spend. So you can cut that and immediately see some kind of bump in terms of the numbers. And then since Android devices are kind of, well, there's a lot of them, right? So
Pretty
so you
lot.
can, yeah, you can have really high end devices and also very shitty devices. And what I usually do when I see the Android is not performing that well, then I'm trying to check what kind of devices have what kind of performance and do some kind of exclusion list. So back in days, there was a study. I think I'm not sure if Vuga did it or someone else. They tried to check the performance based on the RAM instead of the actual operational system, because you can have the latest operational system and then the device is pretty shitty anyway because you bought it for $30. so so usually do these like exclusion list based on RAM, and everything that don't have like at least like 2 or 3 gigabytes of RAM, then I just try to exclude it.
Yep.
Because that's a sign of a high-end device, at least for me. I mean, you can do even 4 gigabytes of RAM these days and get pretty high-end devices.
What are the most usual red flags in the channel performance tab?
Well, for example, only one type of optimization. So let's say they're running only value campaigns or only purchase campaigns, or they're running only certain amount of geos, so US and tier one, or only English speaking countries. Like why?
So small diversification.
Yeah. Even like within the one channel, or okay, they're running only one or two channels, not others. And when I ask like why, like, oh well, it didn't perform. Like, when did you try? Like, hey, 2 years ago. Oh yeah, okay. All right, that's
That's a different industry in our case.
yeah. 2 years ago, I mean, well, a lot of changes happened. So like this type, I also try to ask questions, because usually when I do these like audits, I don't speak to the team before, because I don't want to hear their opinions, and I don't want to ask questions, because I just want to see the data, and then I ask why you did this, why you did that, and then they answer, because I just don't want to have biased opinion before doing that audit. It's kind of nice, because then I have all the questions. It's good, which is good. And I mean, that's like also within the Google, there is you can use different types of creatives, different again segments, geo segments, and also different optimization methods. So that's based on like channel performance. But then I put a lot of emphasis on the creatives, and I usually try to look at like what type of soft creatives are running at the moment. If it's static images, videos and playable end cards, and different things. I usually try to keep like all the types of creatives in the mix. Even on Facebook, running static images plus videos. Well, playables not that much, because on Facebook it doesn't make any sense to run playables. Unfortunately, I know Facebook pushed it super hard, but then, man, the performance is terrible. And in terms of the ad networks, I definitely try to push for playables, because there is where it makes sense. And also on Google, static images plus videos, usually static images, and different. Well, that I take a step back. With different types of creatives on Google, you will get different types of inventory. So if you go with images, you can get pretty shitty Google Display Network performance and a lot of scam. And then if you use a lot of videos, different formats and different lengths of videos, you can get pretty high end inventory from YouTube. So
By the
that's
way,
also, yeah.
sorry, one question regarding fakeness. How do you approach that one within the creative? So if they're using it or not, or like should they be using it, or do you propose that like they should be using it?
Well, it depends on the game and the performance of the creatives they have, and what worked and what didn't work before. it's not necessary always to push for fake ads. Also, like I tried to see if they used it before and how did they look like, because you can have fake, which is super fake, and it won't work because, well, it doesn't have anything in common with the gameplay.
Hmm.
But you can have fake that is actually kind of connected to the gameplay. So
Like
I
Dream
don't
Games fake.
like the dream games fake. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So I don't always push for fakes, but sometimes you need to be brave enough and crazy enough to try different creative concepts. Then I try to look at like top 5 and the bottom 5 creatives, because obviously it's important to see what worked, but it's also really important to see what didn't. And then trying to understand like why it could not perform, or why it could perform. And also talking to the creative team and trying to understand like what's their process for creative production, because it's also very important. Sometimes you have like these super long processes in big corporations, and sometimes you have these long processes even like, within the small teams. Like, and I try to understand why the fuck would you do these like long processes? It's super easy. Just brainstorm, look at the competition, and brainstorm again, then produce, test, evaluate, and then the whole
Rinse and
thing.
repeat.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. So but it's also like, again, a dialogue with the team. So looking at the data and then talking to the team to understand what are they doing, how they approach the UA, how they approach the channel testing, and also creative testing as well. And then, as I said, like I'm trying to understand like what's the daily spend, what's the daily revenue, what kind of goals the UA team have, because the UA team has, because there are these like different ROAS goals on the day 7. Obviously, I don't think it makes a lot of sense, but okay, whatever. I still think like you need to have a benchmarks on day 1, day 7, day 30, and sometimes even on a day 14 or even day 3. But like if you have a goal on like day 7, then you don't care on what happens after day 7. And that's what I've seen before for within some UA teams, because like, okay, we hit the day 7 goal, but you didn't, like the LTV didn't grow after day 7. But I don't care. I met the goal. So just set me a different goal. Oh, okay. Well, that's interesting approach. So yeah, I think yeah, that's briefly as well on the UA side.
Cool. Thanks, Maciej. I guess it's over to me in COVID
Yeah.
Casa.
COVID CC
Yeah.
COVID Casa.
So over to Admon. So mine, I think, is like the most non-subjective thing we've talked about because it's all in the numbers. Like everything with Admon is just beautiful. It's right there. So what happens first is like first what you do is I just open up the mediation dashboard, and what I'd like to say, the first thing I do is a sanity check. So I look at first the historical revenue curves of the game going back about 2 to 3 months. You're looking for like any peaks or troughs that you can't be explained by any holidays or any like other events. If you see any like peaks or troughs that don't really make sense, you should really look into why that was. Then you should break down the same time period, take the revenue, break it down by network, and look here again for any peaks or like troughs. And usually, like you can see if there's a big drop, you can even break it by placement, and then you can try to localize which placement is broken or which one is seeing like demand shifting. Also, kind of the sanity check part you should look at is you break also the impressions over impressions per DAU and ad viewer rates, and basically get a sense if your like user base behaviors are shifting. If so, like you should find out why. The golden metrics you're kind of looking for in terms of impressions per DAU for rewarded. Anything above 5 is considered very high. Then also kind of you can shift into looking at the ad viewer rate. So the percentage of people who watch ads in your game. So for rewarded, anything below 45%, I would say is quite bad. And basically that is an indicator that your placements are not good enough or that your rewards are not sufficient enough for people to watch it. Anything above 60 for rewarded is considered very, very good. So yeah, you can even like on iron source mediation, you can break it down further and you can look at the completion rate. That is to say, what is the portion of users that finished a rewarded ad that started? So if it's lower than around 92%, that's an indication that the rewards that you're giving out for this placement are not high enough to warrant users to complete watching the ad. So that is an indication. So if you have high like ad viewer rate but low completion rates, that means that your rewards are not high enough and that you should increase the rewards. The next thing you should look at is, are the SDKs up to date? So SDKs, like, they're pain in the ass to update. I know development teams like hate it.
We hate
but
them.
I know.
Totally.
But
Yeah.
like overall performance always increases when you like improve the SDK and download a newer like version. So there is a trade-off here, right? So usually what I say to development teams is, when an SDK comes out, like, don't jump headfirst into it like on the first day, like, yay. You don't want to do that. So I'd say the ideal time to install a new SDK is 1 to 2 weeks after it being live, because sometimes when these SDKs go live, happens maybe like 3-4 times a year. If you're working with a couple of ad networks, they will crash your game and screw everything up. So what I always say is, let other people test the SDK stability for you. And then after a week, if there's no complaints or emails coming out from the ad network, that's when you install it. And let other people kind of be the guinea pigs. You shouldn't be the guinea pig. So moving on to fill. So that's the next thing after doing all the sanity checks that I look at. Hang on, I'm going to... a little COVID in my throat. So moving on to fill. So I can't stress this enough. Like, fill today, like, there is no excuse for a game to have below 97 to 98% fill on whatever like ad unit they're using for pretty much any geo. Like, even if you have, you know, a couple million impressions a day in India, you will get that filled at one price, probably with Mo, because they're really strong in India. Like, you can localize this, and if I see that there's any fill that's currently below 97%, that's just unacceptable. Like, if you have that, like, that means that you need to add more ad networks and basically maybe move the placements down. But there is like, yeah, no excuse. Even putting in a backfill placement that fills at any like cost, that's what you should be doing. In Iron Source, it's really easy to check like what the fill rate is in the apps, but in AppLovin, it's a bit harder to check overall fill. I've been told that you should basically look at the AppLovin fill as a proxy for overall fill. So whatever the AppLovin bidder is filling at, that's a good proxy what overall fill is in the app. Yeah, say what you want with that. So then the next thing I look at is eCPM. So here's a bit harder to say what is good and what is bad. But a rule of thumb here is that an average good, which is like right on the money, like that's like right in the middle of this like split, is that worldwide eCPM on rewarded video should be around 15, and USA it should be around 30. So anything that's above or below those two numbers, that's either bad or good. So for high organic games, this is always lower because organic traffic tends to be basically not priced as high as inorganic traffic. And the reason why is because when you do paid UA, essentially networks have like tagged that user, so they're aware of what that user is worth in their own network. So let's say if Facebook like brings like a user to your game, and if they notice that, like, they're willing to bid more on that user because they know that that user has behaved in a certain way before. So that's kind of the rule of thumb for eCPM.
Is there any way to like kind of increase it if I'm that organically heavily dependent game, like, I don't know, Subway Surfers or something like that?
Yeah, so usually ad networks favor like what can you say, locations or games that have a lot of impressions. So if you can increase the impressions per DAU or overall impressions in the game, that generally will increase your eCPM. You can also, but if you think about it, eCPM is just a function of like how your users performed with that particular network in the last 7 days, like CTR, install rate, like all those things. So there's nothing really you can do to improve eCPM, and maybe you shouldn't either, because like you got to remember, like you get paid more if more users leave your game, right?
Yeah.
So like a good click-through rate is anything between like 0.7 to 1.2%. That's like a decent click-through rate. But like, yeah, nothing I can say off the bat.
Okay.
The next thing here, moving on to checking, is revenue. So revenue, you got to remember, is fill and eCPM put together, and that's what you should always be optimizing for. So here, what I always look for is the classic Admon mistake that you always make in your career at least once, and that is to see if the like mediation, like revenue matches up with the dashboard revenue. So this is really quick to check in AppLovin. You can just do a network comparison that like checks it really, like checks the delta between the input like amount and like the actual amount you're getting paid out. In ironSource, I believe you have to check it like in each individual like ad placement. So what I'm looking for here is if I have a placement in Unity that's $5 and in Unity it's put as 15, then basically there's a disconnect. And like I've had this a couple of times where like one time with a client, I was just logged in and they were making like $8,000 a day and everyone's super happy. Like, how can we optimize this? And then I look in and like the placements are wrong and they're really making $1,500. And I'm just like, hey guys, hate to be the bearer of bad news, but you're not making 8, you're making 1.5. Like, sorry. And then, you know, there's the Maslow hierarchy of needs like conversation that comes after that begins with anger, which is horrible to deal with. Yeah. The next thing I look at, which is kind of the second last thing I even look at, is the share of revenue or share of voice or wallet or however you say it. So what I do is in the last 30 days, I break down the ad revenue by networks in the last 30 days. You take the revenue by network and you divide it by the overall network to like overall revenue to look at the percentages. What you're looking for here is, in a perfect world, you want an even split among as many networks as possible. So if a network has more than 50% share of revenue, that's a yellow flag, not a red flag, but a yellow flag. Essentially, that means that that network has price setting power in your app over your inventory, because basically they're taking up majority of the fill. So if you have that situation where maybe like an AppLovin or ironSource or like AdMob is taking up like more than half or almost half, you need to try to get that down. And when you try to get that down, you will improve competition in your app and you will improve overall revenue. Like, it's a deadly trick. So usually the best way to bring that down is like, be more aggressive with optimizing placements, adding new networks, setting price floors, doing that kind of things. Also, one thing that people forget you can do here is like, if you're already working with all the networks you think you can work with, speak to the network AMs that you have and say like, hey, can we open up some new demand sources? So basically look at like the last 30 days of which like inventory has been predominantly displayed in your app and be like, hey, these genres are working really well on like the ad network that's 50%. Can you force fill a couple of these campaigns just to see how it performs? I think it'll perform well. And usually like those things work. So you got to remember, like, these smaller networks, kind of, the ones like the Vungles or like kind of the ones that are a bit smaller usually in shares of revenue, you can usually like ask them to help you out and like with new demand sources, and that's a good way of getting like their share of revenue up.
Okay, so you want to prevent the monopoly pretty much.
Exactly. And then the last thing I look at if I'm doing a health check or like kind of one of these checks is then take a quick look at the waterfall. Like, does every placement have a different network between them? So the issue is, let's say, like if you have Unity at like 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 with no network like between them, or no network between them filling even, what will happen is after a few weeks, the Unity bidder will figure out that like, I don't need to pay 90, I don't need to pay 80, shit, I don't even need to pay 70 nor 60, I can pay at 50 because there's nothing in between here. So they look at the ad requests, or the bidder looks automatically at the ad requests. If it's roughly the same at the same amount, like subtracted by the fill, then basically they're going to pay you less because there's no competition in between.
You broke the sandwich rule.
Exactly. Like, you need a sandwich. Yeah, you need a sandwich. Yeah, and then basically the last thing you look at, the top placements, like how much are they filling? So you're looking for a high number here. That's another yellow flag. So like if your top ad placement is like, let's say fiber, that's filling at $90 at 8%, then you're like, oh, I need to add more like higher placements because they're willing to pay a lot more. And that's basically what you look for.
Sounds pretty comprehensive.
It's very comprehensive. And since I've been bedridden for this week, and this is probably the most fun I've had in 4 days.
Nice.
Bing, bong, bong.
Well, nice. Any last comments, tips, or tricks that we can share with the guys and the audience?
Yeah, I would say regarding mine, it's like mine is, I guess, the most stable one, because I guess your guys is much more depending on the context and seasonality and like where are we with the markets. Mine is more kind of prone to design trends, let's say, or business model changes, but they don't change that fast. But yeah, I would say regarding those two, they need to be put into the context, as Matej said. Like, yeah, we tried two years ago. Like situation's completely different now. So take it with a grain of salt if you're listening today or in 1 year ago.
2 years.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. Well, I have one question for you, Matej. Just off the cuff right now. Like in order from 1 to 5, what are the strongest UA like networks or / sources you can use right now that what you're seeing? Just like if rank them, like 1 is Google, 2 is Facebook, like up to 5.
Well, 1 would be Google, then TikTok, Unity, I would say Facebook, and maybe Apple. I mean, from the best to well, not the worst, but least efficient.
I don't see why, and like no one else I've ever heard in a podcast is that clear. Like no one says that. Like there we go.
Right?
You
But
heard
like,
it here
that's
first.
something that works, at least for me. But again, this is something that works for me. I would think it would work for you as well, but you never know. That's why I always try to recommend like something like a testing process or testing methodology. Get like 10 to 15% out of your budget on a monthly basis and use it for testing. You never know like what's changed within the platform. If we had this like podcast recording like last year, I wouldn't definitely say like TikTok is on second place. I would say Facebook, Google, Unity, and that's it. But TikTok definitely improved quite a lot in the last months. Unity as well. I mean, it was really good performing channel last year. There's also changes on the platforms themselves. So definitely different the UA mix on Google than it's on iOS at the moment. So yeah, think about that.
Cool.
Nice.
Sweet.
Yeah, I think there you have it, guys. Well, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, because that's super important also for us, but also for you, because then you will get the fresh recording as soon as it's uploaded.
Also, we're super vain and we need those clicks.
Yeah, exactly. All right, perfect. Thank you very much, guys. See you next time.
Yeah.
Bye.